what would happen when we focus on what's right with people rather than fixating on what's wrong with them.
So for someone who has never heard of the Clifton Strengths Finder, can you give us a high-level overview of what this thing is?
Absolutely. So the Clifton Strengths is essentially a study of success. So they look at what you're great at, what your natural talents are. There's a list of 34 different themes, and you take an assessment, and it tells you your top 5 of those 34 themes. So in that little snapshot, it's telling you what you're naturally gifted at, what you're great at. And at a higher level, when you learn how to really lean into and leverage those strengths, then they become strengths. They're not just a talent, they're actually the very best parts of you and your strengths.
What is the science and philosophy behind this assessment? Because people might be familiar with others like the Myers-Briggs or DISC or Enneagram. How is this one different from those?
Yeah, so I think all the assessments open an incredible door to understanding yourself. I think Clifton Strengths is one of the more positive assessments out there. So at the root of everything, it's telling you what you're naturally good at, what you're naturally gifted at. One of my favorite quotes that came from Donald Clifton, who actually developed the assessment tool, is he says, what would happen when we focus on what's right with people rather than fixating on what's wrong with them? And honestly, we live in a world full of comparison, right? It's at our fingertips every single day. And it's so easy to get lost in thinking, how can I be more like this person, either professionally or even how can I be a better mom or parent like this person? What this tool is telling you is you are incredible the way that you are. So it encourages you to find out what you're great at and just do more of that. At the Nebraska University, they did a study where they polled about 60,000 10th graders at the university, and they determined their level of reading talent. So they took them through a speed reading course. And what they determined in the beginning, track with me here, is that the average group of readers, they started at reading about 90 words per minute. And the above average readers, they started at about 300 words per minute. So there's a big gap there.
Huge, yeah.
They put all of them together through a speed reading course. They didn't really know at the beginning who, was more talented than the other. They all went through the course, and what they found was really fascinating. So the group that started at reading 90 words per minute, they actually leapt up to about 150 words per minute on average, which is great, right? That'll help them in their academics. It's not bad. But what was amazing is the group of readers that started at 300 words per minute, they jumped all the way to 2,900 words per minute.
Wow.
Which is amazing, right? And what that proves and what that told everyone is that you have so much more room to grow in your area of talent than your area of weakness. Mm-hmm. And the amazing thing, I get chills even when I think about it, the amazing thing that I think about is how many of those gifted readers do you think would have voluntarily signed up to go through a speed reading course?
Right.
Not a lot, right? Because they already knew, I'm good at this, I can read at a decent level. But because they spent that time and investing in their talent, they improved immensely. And I think not many of us intentionally take the time to build out our area of talent. Yeah. I think the exception is artists and athletes, of course. So they're the ones who, they sort of recognize talent at a certain age, maybe at a young age. They invest in that to get even better. But most of us aren't really paying attention to what our other natural areas of talent are. And we have exponentially more room to improve if we just lean into those.
And a lot of times I think that we feel we need to fix our weaknesses.
Yes.
So where do you stand on focusing on our strengths versus trying to spend that energy fixing our weaknesses?
I love that question. That's something I'm definitely passionate about. I think the reality is that the way that I say it is there are some things you're good at and there are some things you suck at. And that's just the way that it is, right? And so if we learn to focus more on what we're great at, not only will that bring more joy to everything around us, but it's also going to open doors to do more of those things. And I think weaknesses, it's important to understand that about yourself. It's all part of just gaining that self-awareness. But most of the time, you really just need to learn to manage your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So either how can I use some of my strengths or some of my interests to manage my weakness? Or I think more importantly, who can I partner with to help me with this area? I'd love to do a little exercise with some people where I tell them to make a list of maybe 5 to 10 tasks that you're regularly responsible for. So whether that's things that you do in your job, maybe in your work or your home life, And then think about what are 3 of those things in that list that you enjoy the most, that you do with the most excellence and ease. And then you can think about your strengths and how do they contribute to those things that you enjoy the most. And what you're left with is that understanding of, wow, I love doing these things because they're aligned with my strengths. That's why it gives me energy. That's why I enjoy them. But then you also have to look at those things that you didn't circle that are either things you don't enjoy or maybe that drain your energy. And that's where you can ask that question, well, how do I manage them? Sometimes I just have to do these things. For me, it's all the organizational components of my job. I'm just not good at that. Absolutely. So I've learned I have to do it, right? I also have learned that there are people in my organization who love doing those things and who I can ask to partner with me. But then it also helps me identify the things that I love and give me the language to share that with people and even ask whether a supervisor or someone you're in a relationship, how can I do more of these things that bring me joy and give me life?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's an example of the way that someone has used knowing their strengths to reshape their life?
I love that question too. I did a full session with district school leaders. So we did a whole day on Clifton Strengths, and one of the district leaders came up to me and she said, first of all, I've been in this role for 30 plus years, and this half day of learning about my strengths has given me language and understanding into myself that I never have had before. Wow. And that wasn't me necessarily, that was just the tool and being able to give someone that time and attention. But she also learned that the things that she loves the most about her job are the things she's doing the least. So she was able to go to her supervisor and say, hey, I'm really good at writing these proposals and, these grants and whatever it may be, but I don't actually have the opportunity to be the one who presents on them. And I'm really good at that. I have these communication talents. I love being in front of people. So she was able to look at that and almost redesign her role in a way to say, this is something that I'm really good at and that I love doing, and I'd like the opportunity to do it more. And when I checked back in with her a year later, she said that she's been asked to do most of the presentations in her board meetings and district meetings, and that has been something she's looked forward to more and more.
That's so neat.
Yeah.
So it's the StrengthsFinder, not the Strengths and Weaknesses Finder. Tell us a little bit about how it goes. So a person goes online, I'm assuming, and takes an assessment?
Yes, they can go to Gallup-Cerified.
Okay, and then what happens? What's the next step?
You take an assessment. I think it tells you to give yourself about 45 minutes. I found that people can get through it in maybe 20, 30 minutes. And it asks a series of questions, and it asks you to say, are you more on this end of the spectrum or on this end of the spectrum? And I can't recall specific questions, but everyone who's taken it will remember that you go this way or you go that way. And it's essentially just ruling out where you're naturally driven and where your natural talents lie.
And then does it give you a report, or what happens next?
Yeah, so it gives you a report. I think it emails you your generic report. What I love to tell people is to go back into the website, log in with the same email and password that you used when you took the assessment. And if you keep scrolling down, there's a variety of resources and tools that it gives you. And there's one report that's called the Strengths Insight Report. And that insight report gives you a full customized report of your top 5 using the other 34 and where they fell. So for me, I have positivity and my husband has positivity. But if you print both of our reports and you read, I know, right? It's just a gift. If you print both of them and you look at them side by side, they say entirely different things on that theme insight guide, because it's taking into account all of our other themes and all of our other talents and how they stack up. So that is an incredible resource to tap into to say, okay, I'm not just reading the generic description of what this theme means, but I'm actually reading on paper how it applies to me. And it's pointing out things that no one else maybe might know about me. But you do have to invest in those talents to turn them into strengths. Don't just let them sit on the shelf, right? Do the work to really understand what this means for me. And even like some things you pointed out, how do I take these different action steps? How do I challenge myself to exercise this muscle?
Katie, this was so much fun, and I'm inspired to go back and get my report back out. And like you said, not leave it on the shelf.
Absolutely.
And make the most of it. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.